How to Stop Getting Angry at Stupid Things, Stoic Lessons. The man who spills his coffee and curses for 10 minutes has just handed his morning to a cup of liquid. The driver who cuts you off and steals your peace for the rest of the day has just been given command over your nervous system by a stranger he will never meet again. This is the quiet tragedy of the undisciplined mind. We hand out our composure to people and events that never asked for it and would not care even if they knew. The Stoics understood this better than any philosophers before or since. They watched men rage at broken sandals, spilled wine, and rude servants, and they asked a simple question that still cuts through the noise today. Why would you give something so cheap the power to ruin something so valuable as your peace of mind? This is not a script about suppressing anger or pretending it does not exist. It is about understanding where it comes from, why it feels so justified in the moment, and how the ancient Stoics trained themselves to remain calm in a world designed to provoke them. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire under constant threat, buried his own children, and still wrote himself nightly reminders not to let irritation steal his character. Seneca, exiled and betrayed by men he trusted, built an entire philosophy around the idea that anger is a temporary madness we choose to indulge. If they could master this in circumstances far harder than a delayed flight or a rude comment online, so can you. If you want more lessons like this one, built to help you master your mind and reclaim your composure, subscribe to Quotes Library now. This channel exists to bring ancient wisdom into modern life, one video at a time, and every subscriber helps this message reach someone who needs it. Principle 1. Anger is never about the thing itself. The Stoics taught that no external event has the power to make you angry. What angers you is not the spilled coffee, the traffic, or the careless comment from a coworker. What angers you is the story you tell yourself about what that event means. Epictetus put it plainly. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the opinions they hold about things. The cup does not care that it's spilled. The traffic does not know you exist. It is your judgment, arriving faster than conscious thought, that transforms a neutral event into a personal insult. This is why two people can experience the identical situation and respond in completely different ways. One person's flight gets cancelled and he spends the next 3 hours in a fury, snapping at gate agents and ruining his own evening before it even begins. Another person's flight gets cancelled and he shrugs, opens a book, and treats the delay as unplanned reading time. The event was identical. The suffering was optional. The difference lived entirely in the story each man told himself about what the delay meant about his day, his control, and his worth. Once you understand this, you gain something extraordinary, the ability to interrupt your own anger before it fully forms. The next time something irritates you, pause and ask yourself what judgment you just made. Did you decide this event means you are disrespected? Did you decide it means the world is against you? 9 times out of 10, the judgment is an exaggeration invented in half a second by a mind trained to overreact. Catch the judgment, and you catch the anger before it catches you. Principle 2. The cost of anger always exceeds the provocation. Seneca wrote an entire treatise on anger, and his central argument was brutally practical. Anger always costs more than the thing that triggered it. A man insulted at a dinner party may lose his temper, throw a plate, and humiliate himself in front of guests he will need to work with for years. The insult lasted 3 seconds. The consequences of his reaction lasted a lifetime. This is the mathematics of anger that most people never calculate. They react instantly and pay the bill slowly, in damaged relationships, in lost opportunities, in a reputation for instability that follows them long after the original provocation is forgotten. Consider the modern equivalent. A single rude comment online can consume an entire evening if you allow it. You could spend that evening building something, connecting with people who matter, or simply resting so you can perform better tomorrow. Instead, you spend it drafting responses to a stranger who will forget the exchange within minutes, while you carry the tension in your shoulders for hours. The provocation was cheap. Your response made it expensive. The Stoic response is not to pretend the insult never happened. It is to calculate, in the moment, whether your reaction is worth the price. Ask yourself, will this matter in a week? Will the person who provoked me even remember this in a month? Most of the time, the honest answer is no, and that honest answer alone is often enough to drain the anger before it drains you. Discipline is not about denying that something happened. It is about refusing to pay more for it than it is worth. Principle 3. Anger is a confession of weakness, not strength. Popular culture often confuses anger with power. The man who raises his voice, who slams the table, who makes others flinch, is sometimes mistaken for a man in control. The Stoics saw the opposite. To them, anger was proof that a man had lost control, not gained it. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the best revenge is to not become like the person who wronged you. A man ruled by his temper has handed his composure to whoever is standing in front of him, and that is not strength. That is surrender dressed up as intensity. Real strength looks different, and it is far quieter. It is the man who receives an insult and responds with the same calm he had 5 minutes earlier. It is the leader who hears devastating news and does not raise his voice, because he understands that panic in leadership spreads faster than any crisis it responds to. This kind of composure unsettles people far more than shouting ever could, because it signals a mind that cannot be manipulated through provocation. People learn quickly who can be baited into losing control, and they learn just as quickly who cannot. There is a story about a Spartan general who, upon hearing that his son had died in battle, simply said, "I knew he was mortal," and continued directing his troops. This was not coldness, it was mastery. He had already made peace with the nature of life and death long before the news arrived, so the news, however painful, did not shatter the discipline he had built over decades. This is the target the Stoics aimed for. Not the absence of feeling, but the presence of a foundation feeling cannot destroy. Principle 4. Most provocations are beneath your attention. Marcus Aurelius kept a private journal, never intended for publication, in which he constantly reminded himself of a simple truth. Most of what irritates us is not worth the mental energy we spend on it. He wrote to himself about the pettiness of gossip, the insignificance of insults from fools, and the futility of expecting perfect behavior from imperfect people. If the most powerful man in the known world needed daily reminders not to waste his composure on small things, what makes the rest of us think we are exempt from the same discipline? Think about the last time something small ruined your mood. A comment from someone whose opinion should not matter to you. A minor mistake by a stranger serving your coffee. A notification on your phone from an account you do not even respect. In the moment, these things feel urgent, almost personal, as though they demand a response. But step back an hour later, and most of them reveal themselves for what they always were: noise, beneath the attention of a disciplined mind. The Stoic practice here is simple but demanding. Before reacting to anything, ask yourself one question: is this worthy of my attention? Not, is this annoying? Not, do I have the right to be upset? Simply, is this worthy? A rude stranger is rarely worthy. A minor inconvenience is rarely worthy. Save your attention, your energy, and your peace for things that actually deserve them, and you will find that the vast majority of daily irritations quietly lose their grip on you. If this way of thinking is resonating with you, this is exactly the kind of content quotes library is built around. Subscribe now so you never miss a lesson designed to strengthen your mind against the noise of daily life. Principle 5. You cannot control others, only your response. At the center of Stoic philosophy sits the dichotomy of control. Some things are within your power, and everything else is not. Your judgments, your choices, and your responses are within your power. Other people's behavior, their opinions of you, and the events that happen around you are not. Anger almost always arises from confusing these categories, from believing you should have control over something that was never yours to control in the first place. You cannot control whether a coworker is rude to you. You can control whether you let that rudeness dictate your afternoon. You cannot control whether a driver cuts you off in traffic. You can control whether you spend the next 20 minutes fuming about a person you will never see again. Every time you get angry at something outside your control, you are essentially demanding the world behave differently than it does, and the world, indifferent to your demands, will continue doing exactly what it was always going to do. This is not resignation. It is not telling yourself that nothing matters. It is redirecting your energy toward the only place it can actually make a difference: your own response. A man who masters this distinction becomes almost impossible to provoke, not because nothing bothers him, but because he has stopped expecting control over things that were never his to control. This single shift, practiced daily, is perhaps the most powerful tool the Stoics ever developed for lasting peace of mind. A short story: The Potter and the Fool. In the town of Antikyra, there lived a potter named Doros, known throughout the region for the beauty and precision of his work. Merchants traveled great distances to purchase his bowls and vases, and his reputation for craftsmanship was matched only by his reputation for patience. One afternoon, a young man named Cleon, known in the town for his loud opinions and short temper, entered the workshop while Doros was finishing a delicate vase intended for a wealthy buyer in Corinth. Cleon, in a fit of carelessness, knocked over a shelf while gesturing wildly during an argument with another customer. Several unfinished pieces shattered on the floor, including one Doros had spent 3 days shaping. The workshop fell silent, everyone expecting the potter to erupt in fury. Instead, Doros knelt, examined the broken pieces, and said calmly, "Clay breaks. That is its nature. My piece does not have to break with it." Cleon, stunned and embarrassed, stammered an apology, expecting punishment or at least harsh words. Doros simply asked him to help sweep the fragments and offered him a seat. Over the following hour, as they cleaned together, Doros explained that he had broken far more pieces himself over the years through his own mistakes than any customer had ever broken for him. "If I raged at every accident," he said, "I would have burned out my spirit before I ever became a master of my craft." Years later, Cleon became a respected merchant known for his own remarkable composure in difficult negotiations. When asked how a man once famous for his temper became famous for his calm, he would tell the story of the broken vase and the potter who taught him that clay, like circumstance, is fragile by nature, but a disciplined mind does not have to shatter alongside it. Principle 6. Anger feeds on attention and starves without it. There is a peculiar quality to anger that most people never notice. It requires constant fuel to survive. The moment you stop feeding it with replayed arguments, imagined confrontations, and rehearsed comebacks, it begins to fade on its own. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology confirmed it. Seneca advised that the fastest way to end anger is to refuse to feed it, because anger deprived of attention cannot sustain itself for long. Most people do the opposite without realizing it. They replay the argument in their head 10 times, each time adding a sharper response they wish they had given. They imagine the confrontation happening again, this time with them winning decisively. Each replay adds more fuel to a fire that would have burned out naturally within minutes if left alone. By the time bedtime arrives, an insult that lasted 3 seconds has been relived 50 times, and the person goes to sleep angrier than when the event first occurred. The discipline here is deceptively simple. Notice when you are replaying a provocation, and consciously choose to redirect your attention elsewhere. This is not suppression. It is starvation of a fire that only grows when you keep adding wood to it. Go for a walk. Focus on a task that requires concentration. Talk to someone about something unrelated entirely. Within a short time, you will notice the intensity fading, not because you forced it away, but because you simply stopped feeding it the attention it needed to survive. Principle 7. Composure is a skill, not a personality trait. Many people believe that calm, even-tempered individuals were simply born that way, as though composure were a genetic gift handed to some and denied to others. The Stoics rejected this idea entirely. They treated self-control the way a craftsman treats a skill, something built through repetition, deliberate practice, and daily reflection. Marcus Aurelius was not naturally calm. He trained himself into calmness through years of disciplined journaling and constant self-examination, much of which survives in his private writings. This means the person who currently loses their temper at minor inconveniences is not doomed to remain that way forever. Composure can be built the same way strength is built in a gym, through repeated, intentional exposure to resistance. Each time you catch yourself before reacting, each time you pause before responding to a provocation, you are strengthening a mental muscle that grows more resilient with use. The first few attempts will feel unnatural and difficult, exactly like the first few attempts at any physical exercise. Start small. Choose one minor irritation each day, something that would normally trigger a flash of frustration, and practice responding with deliberate calm. A slow driver, a delayed response to a message, a minor mistake by someone around you. Treat each of these as training reps for your composure. Over weeks and months, what once required immense effort will begin to feel natural, and you will find yourself becoming the kind of person others describe as unshakable, not because you were born that way, but because you built it one small representative at a time. Principle 8. Expectations are the hidden root of most anger. Beneath nearly every flash of anger lies an unspoken expectation that was violated. You expected the driver to signal before merging. You expected the coworker to respond politely. You expected the world to run smoothly according to a plan you never actually communicated to anyone else. When reality fails to match these silent expectations, the mind interprets the gap as an injustice, and injustice, real or imagined, is one of the fastest paths to anger. The Stoics practiced a mental exercise designed to close this gap before it could cause damage. Each morning, Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that he would encounter rude, selfish, and difficult people throughout the day, not as a pessimistic prediction, but as a realistic acknowledgement of how the world actually operates. By expecting difficulty in advance, he removed its power to shock him when it arrived. The driver who cuts you off is not violating some cosmic law you were promised. He is simply behaving exactly as flawed, distracted humans sometimes behave. This does not mean lowering your standards for how you treat others. It means releasing the demand that everyone else meet those same standards at all times. Try this exercise tomorrow morning. Before leaving your house, mentally rehearse the minor frustrations you are likely to encounter: traffic, rude comments, technical glitches, and decide in advance that none of them will be permitted to steal your composure. You are not being pessimistic. You are removing the element of surprise that anger depends on to catch you off guard. If you have made it this far, you already understand the value of this kind of thinking. Hit subscribe on Quotes Library so more lessons like this reach you the moment they are released, and share this with someone who needs a calmer mind today. Principle 9. Silence is often the strongest response. When provoked, most people feel an overwhelming urge to respond immediately, as though silence would somehow be interpreted as weakness or defeat. The Stoics believed the opposite. Silence, deployed deliberately, is one of the most powerful tools available to a disciplined mind. It denies the provocateur the reaction they were seeking, and it buys precious seconds for judgment to catch up with instinct. Epictetus taught his students that when insulted, the wisest response is often no response at all, at least not immediately. A pause of even a few seconds allows the initial surge of emotion to pass through the body before it reaches the mouth or the fists. Most people who lose their temper and later regret it will tell you the same thing. Everything happened so fast, there was no time to think. The Stoic practice of deliberate silence creates exactly the time that was missing. This is not about becoming passive or allowing yourself to be walked over. It is about choosing your moment rather than being controlled by the moment chosen for you. A response delivered 5 minutes later, calmly and deliberately, carries far more weight and far less regret than a reaction fired instantly in the heat of provocation. The next time someone says something designed to provoke you, try counting silently to 10 before responding. In most cases, by the time you reach 10, the urgency to react will have faded, and what remains will be a far wiser, far calmer version of whatever you were about to say. Principle 10. A calm mind sees more clearly than an angry one. Anger does more than damage relationships and waste energy. It actively impairs your ability to think clearly in the exact moments when clear thinking matters most. The Stoics observed this centuries before neuroscience confirmed it. An angry mind narrows its focus, exaggerates threats, and loses access to the reasoning that would otherwise guide it toward the best possible response. This is why decisions made in anger are so often regretted later, once the fog has cleared and the full picture becomes visible again. Consider negotiations, difficult conversations, or moments of conflict at work. The person who remains calm under pressure consistently outperforms the person who reacts emotionally, not because they care less, but because their mind remains available to them. They can read the room, choose their words carefully, and respond to what is actually happening rather than to the exaggerated threat their anger has painted onto the situation. Composure is not just a moral virtue in Stoic philosophy. It is a practical advantage. This is perhaps the most compelling reason to build the discipline these lessons describe. It is not simply about becoming a more pleasant person to be around, though that is a welcome side effect. It is about becoming a more capable person, someone whose judgment remains sharp precisely when everyone else's judgment is clouded by emotion. In a world that constantly rewards reaction, the calm mind becomes a rare and valuable advantage, quietly outperforming louder, angrier competitors in nearly every arena that matters. Closing reflection. The stupid things that anger us daily, the spilled coffee, the rude stranger, the delayed reply, the minor inconvenience, will keep coming for as long as you live. This is simply the texture of ordinary life, unavoidable and largely unremarkable. What is not fixed, what remains entirely within your control, is how much of your peace you are willing to hand over to each of these small events as they arrive. The Stoics did not eliminate the provocations of daily life. They eliminated their power over the provocations by mastering the space between event and response. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire and still had to remind himself daily not to let irritation define his character. Seneca lost his fortune and his freedom and still found a way to write calmly about the futility of rage. If men who faced far greater trials than a bad commute or a rude comment could master this discipline, the tools are clearly available to the rest of us as well. It requires nothing more than daily practice, honest reflection, and a willingness to catch yourself before the old patterns take over once again. Start today. Choose one small irritation and practice the pause. Choose one provocation and practice the silence. Choose one expectation and release it before reality has the chance to violate it. Composure, like any skill worth having, is built one repetition at a time, and every representative brings you closer to becoming the kind of person nothing small can shake. If this video gave you something valuable, subscribe to Quotes Library for more lessons drawn from Stoic philosophy, Machiavellian strategy, and the wisdom of history's sharpest mind. Every subscriber helps this channel grow and helps this message reach someone who needs it today. Leave a comment below and let us know which principle you needed to hear most. Keep becoming.